In this video, I'm going to discuss the requirements to be an S corporation. Now, you might have heard that once you have a corporation, you can make an election to be treated as an S corporation by filing Form 2553 with the IRS. And that's true, but not just any company can elect to be an S corp. You need to be what's called a small business corporation. Now, when people hear the word small business corporation, they think that there might be some limits on the amount of assets a corporation can have, or that they can't be an S corp if they exceed some certain sales threshold, but that's not the case. Okay, the requirements to be an S corp are right here, and I'm going to go through each of them in detail, starting with the need to be a domestic corporation. Okay, that means that the corporation needs to have been incorporated and organized in the United States. So foreign corporations cannot be an S corp. Okay, so you'd need to incorporate, for example, in a U.S. state like Illinois. Okay, you go and you set up a corporation in Illinois, and so now you're incorporated in the United States, and then you make the election to be treated as an S corp, assuming that you meet the other requirements, which we're going to discuss. Okay, the second requirement being that you are not an ineligible corporation. Okay, some corporations are just deemed to be automatically ineligible to be an S corporation. Okay, and here are the types. So there's certain banks and insurance companies, and then also a domestic international sales corporation. Okay, so certain financial institutions, certain insurance companies, domestic international sales corporations, just no matter what, cannot be an S corporation under any circumstances. Now, also to be an S corporation, you need to only have one class of stock. Now, this one's a little confusing, okay? So you can't have, for example, common stock and preferred stock with differences in distribution or liquidation rights. However, it is allowable to have differences in voting rights. So, for example, you could have an S corporation where you have common stock that has voting rights, and then you have common stock that does not have voting rights. So you can have voting and non-voting common stock, and that will not violate the one class of stock provision or requirement to be an S corp. Okay, so you can have voting common stock, non-voting common stock, but you could not have common stock and then preferred stock, because that would lead to differences in distribution or liquidation rights. Okay, obviously preferred shareholders would have preference in terms of liquidation. If the corporation were to be liquidated, they would get paid first before common shareholders. That's not permissible. So one class of stock, but you can have voting and non-voting as stock. So you can have differences with respect to voting rights, but not with respect to distribution or liquidation. Now, also, another requirement at S corp, you cannot have more than 100 shareholders. Okay, so this is why, like, if you think about large companies like Microsoft, you say, why aren't they organized as an S corp? Right? They have thousands of shareholders, so they do not qualify. They cannot meet the requirements to be an S corporation. Now, here's a caveat. Okay, so I said maximum 100 shareholders. However, a group of family members would be counted as a single shareholder. Okay, so let's say that there was a corporation and we had, let's say, 99 shareholders that were completely unrelated to each other. And then we had me and my wife. Okay, so there's me and my wife, Brooke. Okay, my wonderful wife. So that looks like 101. And you say, hey, wait a minute. We got 101 here, so this can't be an S corporation. But my wife and I will be treated as a single shareholder, so instead of it being 101, we'd be at 100. So we're okay. So we're part of the same family. Now, if my wife were to say, you know what am I doing with this guy? I want to get a divorce, right? And she divorces me, even former spouses count as well. Okay, so it would still be treated as an S corporation, right? So a group of family members, a single shareholder. So you could technically, even though it says maximum 100 shareholders, technically there are instances where you can have more than 100 shareholders due to that exception. Now, there are also restrictions on who can be a shareholder. For example, a partnership cannot be a shareholder of an S corporation. The reason being that would be a way to get around this 100 shareholder limitation, right? If you say, oh, can only be 100 shareholders, well, I'm going to set up this partnership, and the partnership will be a shareholder, and maybe the partnership has, 400 partners or something, or you have a C corporation with 400 shareholders, and then that's a shareholder of the S corp. And so they basically said, look, no, you can't have a C corp or a partnership be a shareholder of the S corp. Okay, there are certain, so it's not just individuals. Obviously individuals can be shareholders, but it's not just individuals. There are certain organizations, certain trusts, exempt entities, and in some cases can be shareholders of an S corp. Okay, so it's not just individuals. There are certain organizations, but not C corps, not partnerships, and there is even a thing called a qualified subchapter S corporation, this QSSS. Okay, where you can have, and maybe I'll make a separate video on this, but you can have where an S corp is actually a subsidiary of another S corp. Okay, but there's requirements, so the parent has to own 100% of the subsidiary, has made this election to treat the subsidiary as a QSSS. Okay, so I won't go into all the details for that, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of the certain types of kind of exceptions here. But the key thing here, C corps and partnerships cannot be shareholders of an S corp. Now, non-resident aliens also cannot be a shareholder of an S corp. So what is a non-resident alien? Non-resident alien is someone, they're not a citizen of the United States, and they're not a resident of the United States, okay? So if you are not a U.S. citizen and you're not a U.S. resident, you cannot be a shareholder of an S corporation. So if we've gone through all these different requirements, right? So these are the requirements to make the valid election be treated as S corp, but you need to continue to meet those requirements even after you get S corp status. Because if at any point in time it's like, oh, okay, well, you know what? A C corp became a shareholder, or a non-resident alien became a shareholder, then in that case, the corporation would lose its S corp status.